Hey man, it looks like you're cutting your squat depth. Yo bro, looks like your calves aren't proportionate to your biceps. Yo girl, shouldn't you be eating more protein? Yeah, absolutely. You know what? You're right. I think I cut my depth on that. And you know what? I probably cut my depth on a lot of other things too. Layer in as much or as little sarcasm as you want, but generally, agreeing and moving on, or agreeing and even amplifying, gets the other person to stop talking. All right, today we are going to talk about criticism both online and in person. If you have started a bodybuilding or fitness journey, I'm sure you are aware people like to make comments, they like to make critiques, they like to offer criticism, both constructive and otherwise. They will critique you on your appearance, your diet, your training split, your exercise form. They will judge you based on your posing, the amount of time that you spend working on your training, diet, or competing. They may accuse you of anabolic use of some kind or any performance enhancers and any number of things that they could possibly comment on. So here's what I do to deal with criticism, both online and in person. Hopefully it'll help you out. Let's get to the episode. Number one thing I do: don't engage. Leave the situation. So in any given situation, both online and in person, you have the option to not be there. You can opt out. You can not show up. People don't show up for class. People don't show up for work. People cancel events that they plan on attending at the last minute. And the same thing for criticism. You can just not show up. If you know that, let's say you are posting things online or on social media, and you know that there is a comment function on, first, number one, you can just turn that stuff off. Number two, you can just choose not to read it and not show up for those comments or criticisms. Yes, it feels good to read the positive comments. However, like let's say if you're a person, I am not one of these people. If you have thousands of followers, and let's say that 99% are great, and then like 1% are crappy. And from a psychological perspective, that sort of pans out in terms of psychopathology. So 1% isn't going to be great in terms of how they interact with you. So if 1% of individuals leave you a poor comment, let's say you have 100,000 followers, that's like 1,000 people leaving you bad comments. If you read into those bad comments, it's just not going to be a great day. So the number one thing that you can do whenever dealing with sort of online criticism is you can leave the situation. However, in person, if this is criticism going on with family or friends, if it's criticism going on from sort of work colleagues or school colleagues, that might be a little bit different and you may not want to leave the situation. So we move on to our 2 through 6 things that we can do whenever dealing with criticism. Number 2, consider the criticism. Are they right? Is this person just flat out right? Hey man, it looks like you're cutting your squat depth. Yo bro, looks like your calves aren't proportionate to your biceps. Yo girl, shouldn't you be eating more protein? Any number of criticisms. For all criticism that you receive, take a step back. If you can't leave a situation, you want to consider if the criticism is just flat out right. Like for this and for YouTube, like let's say I post a video and someone can clearly see that maybe I'm cutting my squat depth. Maybe they don't know why I'm cutting my squat depth. Shit, maybe I don't know why I'm cutting my squat depth, but let's say they decide to type in a comment or something like that, like, hey, it looks like you're cutting your squat depth. That might be filled with the most caring intent in the world, but that doesn't translate to text very well. So I might receive it poorly. However, if my intention whenever reading comments or things like that is to look and assess whether or not they are accurate or useful, I can get more out of that than just feeling criticized. So if someone commented, hey, it looks like you're cutting your squat depth, instead of allowing this feeling of being sort of overly criticized, or that comment maybe wasn't sort of worded in such a right way that it was soft and and caring, I assess, are they right or are they wrong? And in certain situations, maybe I was cutting my squat depth. If a person's criticism, however worded, is accurate, I tend to take it and try and make modifications off of that. So if you can leave a situation, leave a situation. If you can't leave a situation, and if the criticism is accurate, use that information to better yourself. Number 3, maybe the criticism isn't entirely accurate. This is something that I like to sort of end sessions with. Sometimes I have ended some of these videos with, and that is the phrase, take what's useful and leave the rest. So this is something that I learned in therapy and in supervision in therapy. Not everything that you say is going to land or stick with a person you're working with. Similar to, anybody you coach in person, any number of my patients that I work with in the clinic, any number of your relationships with friends and family, not everything you say is going to be useful. So sort of adding the rejoinder, take what's useful and leave the rest, is similar to if a criticism that is levied at you is accurate in some way, yeah, great. Modify and make it useful. Similarly, not all parts of a criticism are going to be useful. However, if you can just focus on the kernels of truth, you can greatly decrease your distress or the stress that you feel whenever someone is levying criticism at you. An example for me is like making this YouTube channel. Like I had the criticism, and I think it was probably well-natured, that someone said putting doctor in front of your name was misleading because you were talking about training and or reviewing something fitness related. Now, do I agree with that 100%? Not really, but can I see what that person meant? Like, okay, yeah, my doctor's in clinical psychology, I'm a clinical psychologist, and I reviewed fitness-related things. Okay, no, yeah, that's useful. So for some of my videos that are more fitness-related or more review-related, I just swapped out my name. I think that was a fair way to move forward and take sort of the kernels of truth in a criticism that someone gave to me. Number 4 thing you can do whenever dealing with criticism online or in person: don't attribute to malice what can be attributed to a lack of information, ignorance, or something else. Now, definitionally, malice is the intent to do harm or evil. So if we sort of reconceptualize criticism as, instead of a form of malice, perhaps the criticism that's being levied at you, whether it be about your training, your diet, your posing, your form and exercise, if we flip from thinking this person is out to do us harm to perhaps this person is ignorant of our training status, like we're not doing a certain amount of training volume because that's not where we're at in our mesocycle, we're not doing a certain depth in a particular movement because of injury status, we can sort of reframe what we think is a person trying to, do us harm into, well, maybe this person lacks some information. So in an instance when a person levies something at us that we feel is unfair, is it because they lack a certain piece of information? Is it because they are ignorant of, like, let's say our training status and or injury status? And reframing the criticism in that light, that can sort of help de-stress us and help us reconceptualize how we're receiving the information. Again, flipping from the perspective that this person is out to harm us to maybe this person lacks information, maybe they're ignorant about an aspect of our training, nutrition, posing, whatever it is, that can really help to sort of de-stress the situation and help us move in a different direction. Number 5. The number 5 thing that I try to do whenever I receive either in-person or online criticism is amplify and agree. Amplify and agree? Yeah, amplify and agree. What is the point of amplifying and agreeing? Essentially, amplifying and agreeing really just gets the other person stopped in their tracks, and or it gets them moving in a different direction. What's an example? So in therapy, if someone were coming to me and they were really sort of in this pre-contemplation phase, that's part of the trans-theoretical model, you should check that out. But if they're pre-contemplation and there's really no change talk going on, change talk just being, reasons for making a particular change in life, desires, needs, things like that. If there's none of that going on, then maybe I say something like, there's no need for you to quit smoking at all. And now that person, a high percentage of the time, starts thinking about reasons they need to change. Generally, that is a good way to have that person reflect on, well, there's some long-term health things that could benefit me. I could do it to save money, any number of reasons. So agreeing with a person's initial position and then amplifying it helps on their side of things to induce sort of change talk. What does this have to do with fitness, nutrition, training, dieting, bodybuilding? Essentially what agreeing and amplifying does is it smothers the fire. If someone is levying criticism at you, and whether they're, again, we don't want to attribute to malice what is ignorance or a lack of information. If they're levying a criticism at you, and the first thing that you do is agree and maybe take it even farther in the direction that they're going in, they're probably going to stop in their tracks. Or, in the best case scenario, they might walk it back some. So, agreeing and amplifying is a powerful way to handle criticism whenever someone is coming at you like that. So, for something like training, if someone comments on your squat depth or something like that, you could just agree and amplify, like, yeah, absolutely, you know what, you're right. I think I cut my depth on that. And you know what? I probably cut my depth on a lot of other things too. Layer in as much or as little sarcasm as you want, but generally, agreeing and moving on, or agreeing and even amplifying, gets the other person to stop talking. Number 6 thing, the last thing that I do, probably one of the more important things that I do, especially online, if there is a comment, if there is something negative, I assume that this is the person's worst day. I believe we sort of go out into the world and take people as though this is their average day or this is their best day. I think this is unconscious. I don't think we actively think this. I think it's sort of a passive thing. And we never consider that this might be the person's worst day. They might not be able to deliver a message in a kind way today because of any number of reasons. They could have not slept well. They could be hungry. They could have broken up with their spouse. They could have, a family member sick. Any number of things that would make this not their best day. And I think whenever we're engaging in people, we sort of just take them at face value and forget that there are sort of peripheral things that are impacting their mood and the way they deliver criticism, critiques, comments. Layer on the text communication, and there's a ton already lost in translation with that. Assuming that this is the person's worst day allows us to sort of engage some of our empathy and not attribute to sort of internal character flaws what could be attributed to environmental factors or the fundamental attribution error, where we assume that this is part of the person's character as opposed to something that's going on in their environment being their home life, their social life, their work life, any number of things. And if none of those things work, you can just fall back on old habits. You can read all the negative comments, and you can argue with people who give you unfair criticisms. However, if you want a different outcome, I challenge you to give these things a shot. Leave me a comment and let me know if you all have anything that you do whenever you receive criticism. Would really like to hear about that. And I hope these things really help you out. And if you're interested, I think you'll enjoy this next video on a mental skill or a review. I'll catch you there.